That sign should not have been there. The cab slowed as the gravel road bent away from the county highway, and through the dusty windshield I caught a glimpse of something standing tall at the corner of my drive. My heart lurched before my eyes, even registered the words. A wooden slab, freshly sanded, stained, and planted deep into the soil with polished screws. Welcome to Willow Beach. Private access for HOA members only. The lettering was crisp, burned into the grain like scripture. New cedar stain still bled the air with its chemical sweetness. I froze in my seat. For a moment I forgot how to breathe. Those words weren't just wrong, they were impossible. They announced to every passerby that the land I had bled for, the sanctuary I had built with my own two hands, belonged to someone else. The driver glanced at me in the rear view. A young guy, maybe 25, chewing gum, cap turned backward. "This the right spot, sir?" he asked, uncertain. My throat locked. I pushed the door open before the car had even rolled to a stop. Gravel crunched under my boots. "Yeah," I muttered, though the word felt like poison. "This is it." The door slammed behind me, but the sound came distant, like I was underwater. My eyes fixed on that sign, each letter seared into my brain, announcing the same thing again and again. You don't belong here. I should have felt triumph in that moment. For 14 months, survival had meant one thing: coming home. I had survived 8 months in a coma. I had survived 6 more crawling through rehabilitation, teaching my body to obey again. I had clawed my way back to life with one dream. I would return to my lake. But that sign told me I'd lost before I even began. The wind shifted, carrying not pine and fresh water, but fertilizer. Mulch. The faint perfume of store-bought flowers. I blinked hard, almost dizzy. It smelled wrong. It smelled staged. I turned down the trail I had cut myself, each step unwilling, heavy. But the path had changed. My narrow, hand-built curve was gone. In its place stretched a wide lane, graveled smooth, lined with solar lanterns that blinked faintly even in the day. Manicured grass rolled on either side in sculpted waves, green too bright to be natural. Every inch of wilderness I had loved was gone, carved into something lifeless. And then I saw it. My lake, except it wasn't mine anymore. Where once wild reeds had swayed and lily pads had floated, bright sand glittered in the sun, truckloads of it. My natural shoreline bulldozed flat, replaced with a false beach stretching wide and loud. 2 gazebos stood like trophies on either side of the new bank, roofs gleaming, posts wrapped with fairy lights strung like party decorations. Adirondack chairs lined the shore in perfect military formation, each one painted blinding white. And above all that, laughter. I froze. My pulse thundered in my ears. Voices echoed across the water, children shrieking as they splashed, adults calling out, raising glasses. A radio somewhere hummed a cheerful country song. Strangers partying on the bones of my solitude. I stumbled forward, boots crunching gravel too loud. A woman in a swimsuit turned her head briefly, squinting, then looked away without care. To her, I was nobody, just a man who didn't belong. My chest locked, my throat burned. For a long moment, I couldn't even speak. Then a whisper clawed its way out, trembling, raw. They built a resort on my grave. I forced my legs to carry me, faster now, toward the house that had once been mine. My reward for decades of grind, my sanctuary after divorce. The walls I had, rebuilt board by board, but as soon as I saw the porch, a deeper wound struck. The cedar stain was gone, painted beige. My porch swing was missing. Potted plants sat neatly on the steps, symmetrical, store-bought. A Hobby Lobby sign chirped, "Welcome friends," where my tool rack once hung. I reached the door, heart hammering, hand clutching the knob. It didn't turn. I twisted again, harder, still nothing. My old brass key scraped uselessly in the slot. Once. Twice. Again. The lock resisted. A new deadbolt gleamed sleek and black. Electronic. Its red light blinked, waiting for a code I'd never set. They had rekeyed my house. I pulled. My key back, chest heaving. Rage surged hot and choking. My house. My hands shaking against a lock that had erased me. And then I heard it. Tires on gravel. A low engine rumble. I turned just as a black SUV rolled fast up the drive, windows tinted, moving with the arrogance of ownership. Dust curled as it braked hard. The engine cut. The driver's door opened. Karen Woodley stepped out. Her hair, silver blonde and twisted into a bun. Navy pantsuit, crisp, sharp. Clipboard under her arm like a crown. Her posture screamed control, entitlement. She moved with the confidence of someone who believed the world already belonged to her, and she wasn't alone. Two broad men in Lakeside Haven polo shirts climbed out behind her, crossing their arms, planting themselves like security detail. Karen's eyes met mine, narrowed, sharp. Her lips curved, polite but cold. "Can I help you?" The laugh that burst from me was hollow, bitter, dangerous. "You damn well can," I snapped. "What the hell happened to my house?" Her head tilted slightly, smirk twitching as if she enjoyed every second. "And you are—" The words detonated. "I'm Randall Denton. I built this house. I own this land. I own this lake. Everything you're standing on is mine." Her expression didn't change. Only her eyes flickered, calculating. Then, in a tone dipped in silk and poison, she said, "I'm sorry. That can't be. Mr. Denton was declared legally incapacitated. This property has been under emergency community stewardship for 18 months now." My heart slammed in my chest. My mouth went dry. One guard stepped closer, sliding between. "Me and the porch." The other lifted a walkie-talkie, thumb on the button. "You're insane," I spat, voice shaking but loud. "This is my deed, my survey, my coordinates. You can't just erase me." Karen raised her hand, calm, patronizing. "Sir, I understand this is disorienting, but if you continue to trespass, we will involve the authorities." "I am the authority here," I shouted, fury ripping my voice raw. "I have the papers, the filings, the goddamn law," but the guard already spoke into the walkie. "We've got a situation at Willow Beach. Send county sheriff." 5 minutes later, sirens curled faint in the distance. A white sheriff's SUV rolled up, dust trailing. Out stepped a deputy, hand on his belt, eyes scanning like this was just another neighbor spat. Karen moved first, her voice dripping syrup. "Deputy, thank goodness, we've got a trespasser. Claims he owns this home. He's been aggressive, refuses to leave." The deputy's eyes landed on me. Hard, suspicious. "Sir, can I see some ID?" My hand shook as I shoved my license into his hand. "This is my house. My lake. My name's on the deed. They changed my locks, built a fake beach, and now they're trying to push me off my own land." He studied it, then looked at Karen. She handed him a neat folder, pages tabbed. "You'll see here, Deputy. Mr. Denton was declared legally incapacitated. Temporary stewardship assigned to our board." The deputy read her papers longer than my ID. His tone cooled when he looked back. "Sir, do you have proof with you? Deed, survey, anything besides ID?" Ice sank in my gut. My proof was locked, in a vault 2 towns away. All I had was a card and my word. To them, I wasn't an owner. I was a bitter man ranting on someone else's porch. He handed my license back, slow, firm. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave before this escalates." Karen's smirk widened just enough to cut. I backed away, rage burning, boots, scraping gravel. I turned and walked, each step heavier than the last. Karen's eyes followed, smug. victorious. That night, in a motel room that stank of old cigarettes and regret, I sat on the stiff mattress, phone glowing in my hand. I typed my address into Google, and when the page loaded, my world collapsed all over again. Willow Beach, Premier Lakeside Experience. Private events, HOA exclusive access, photos of weddings on my shoreline. Families grilling where my filtration trench once ran. Sunset yoga sessions on the sand they had poured over my reeds. Drone footage labeled Phase 2 Expansion. Water sport deck coming soon. My lake, my land, my name erased. I stared at the glowing. Screen until my throat burned, until rage blurred my vision, until my fists ached from clenching. Then I whispered, voice hoarse but sharp as steel, I will burn this all down, legally. The motel ceiling didn't blink. It just stared back at me, stained yellow from decades of cigarette smoke, textured with cracks that looked like veins. I lay there on the stiff mattress, fully clothed, boots still on, eyes open. The glow from my phone lit the room long after the screen went dark, as if the words burned into my brain. Willow Beach, HOA exclusive. Sleep never came. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again. My lake gutted into a beach, strangers laughing like they'd always belonged, Karen's smirk slicing me down, the sheriff looking at me like a lunatic. Sunrise. I wasn't tired. I was something worse. Cold, sharp, hollowed out and filled with one thought. I wasn't going to fight this with fists or screaming. I'd tried that. They had uniforms, deputies, and paperwork. I needed something, sharper than all of them. So I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. The line clicked after 2 rings. A voice answered, groggy but edged with suspicion. Hello? Marcus. It's Randy. Silence stretched. Then a sharp intake of breath. Dent, Jesus Christ, I thought you were dead. I closed my eyes, jaw clenched. So did they. I laid it all out. The accident. The coma. The rehab. Coming back to find Willow Beach strung up like a resort. Karen standing on my porch like a queen. The sheriff siding with her folder over my license. Every detail spilled out fast, clipped, my voice, tight with fury and exhaustion. Marcus Patel didn't interrupt. He just listened, the sound of his breathing steady on the other end. When I finally ran out of words, he asked just one question. Do you still have your deed? Your original survey lines? Yes, I said instantly. Digital copies on my laptop. Originals in a lockbox at the bank, or at least they were. His tone sharpened, steel over silk. Then you have a case. Get them. Today. The call ended. I sat there for a moment in the silence of that stale motel room, then grabbed my keys and walked out like a man heading to war. The bank teller stared at me like I was a ghost. Maybe I was. When you've been legally erased, maybe everyone can. Feel it in their bones. She scanned my ID twice before sliding it back nervously. One moment, sir. Her shoes clicked across the floor as she disappeared into the vault. Minutes later, she returned with a steel lockbox, dust clinging to its corners. My hand shook as I set it down on the table in the small verification room. The click of the lock opening sounded louder than thunder. Inside lay my life, deed, title, survey maps with coordinates etched in black ink. My name stamped again and again, proof that I existed, proof that this land was mine. I scanned every page, emailed copies to Marcus, then tucked the originals back into the box with trembling care. For the first time since I'd woken up, I felt a flicker of control. Marcus called within the hour. His voice was different now, calm, focused, dangerous. I've reviewed everything. This isn't just trespass, Randy. This is fraud, and it's bigger than just you. That evening I drove to meet my sister, Linda. The diner sat halfway between her town and mine, a squat building with faded neon buzzing weakly against the darkening sky. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee clung to the air. She slid into the booth. Across from me, still in her pharmacy scrubs, hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes. For a moment, relief lit her face. "Randy," her voice cracked. You're really here." But the relief curdled fast. Guilt hung heavy in her eyes, dragging her shoulders down. She couldn't hold my gaze. "What did you sign?" I asked flatly. No small talk. No hugs. Just the blade. Her fingers twisted a paper napkin until it shredded between her hands. "I thought you were going to die," she whispered. "I was scared they'd foreclose on the property. Bills were piling up. A man came. Said he was with a maintenance firm contracted by the county. He told me it was just temporary, just to keep the place safe while you were gone." Ice flooded my veins. "What did you sign, Linda?" Tears welled in her eyes. She looked at me like a child confessing to breaking a window. "I thought it was landscaping authorization. I just wanted them to mow the grass, pay the taxes. I didn't know, Linda." My voice was quiet, but sharp as glass. "What did you sign?" She broke. Her face crumpled. "A power of attorney. Limited," he said. "Just for maintenance. I swear I didn't know." My jaw clenched until it ached. "Who was it?" She shook her head. "Some guy. Said he was from Green Valley Holdings. He seemed official. Said it was county approved. Green Valley. Marcus confirmed it hours later. He called from his office, voice tight with fury. That limited power of attorney was drafted to give Green Valley Holdings administrative control until ownership could be restored or vacated. "The firm's CEO?" He paused for effect. "Karen Woodley's nephew." I sat in the motel room again, staring at the phone in my hand, bile rising in my throat. My sister's desperation had been weaponized into a license to steal, and Marcus wasn't done. "You need to hear this," he said. Papers rustled on his end. "While you were in the hospital, the HOA board didn't just seize stewardship. They filed a petition to the county registry declaring you legally incapacitated. And then," his voice dropped lower, "they filed a death certificate." The world tilted. My breath stuttered. "A what?" "A death certificate," Marcus repeated. His tone was flat, heavy. "For you." I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. "It's dated October of last year," Marcus went on. "Lists your name, your DOB, your driver's license number. States you succumbed to post-coma complications. It's signed by a licensed social worker, Donald Pierce." My mouth finally worked. "Donald Pierce?" Marcus exhaled sharply. "He's not a social worker. My PI ran him down. He's an HVAC technician, and he's dating one of Karen's board members." Silence swallowed the line. They hadn't just stolen my land. They had killed me on paper, erased me so cleanly that even the sheriff had looked at me like a squatter. My stomach turned cold, bile biting at the back of my throat. My fists clenched until nails dug into my palms. Marcus's voice cut through the silence. Calm, steady, deadly. "Randy, this isn't just civil anymore. This is criminal. They falsified a death certificate. They built a resort on your grave, and now we bury them in court." I closed my eyes. Images crashed through me. Karen smirking on my porch, strangers laughing on my sand, my sister's guilt, my own face stamped on a certificate declaring me gone. I opened them again, fire flooding back into my chest. My voice was low, sharp, unshakable. They wanted me dead. Now I'll show them what it looks like when the dead come back. The next week felt less like days and more like a fuse burning down. Marcus didn't waste a second. His calls were sharp, precise, and by the end of the first day, he had a team assembling around me like armor. The first to arrive was Heather LaRue, an environmental consultant with a reputation sharp enough to cut steel. She stepped out of her truck in a khaki vest, her black hair tied tight, water-testing kit swinging from her shoulder. Her eyes scanned my lake the way a doctor scans an X-ray, already finding fractures no one else could see. Beside her came Ray Santos, a forensic auditor with the kind of lean frame and sharp suit that screamed caffeine and suspicion. He carried a laptop bag and a stack of binders so thick they looked like bricks. His smile was quick but tired, the kind of man who had spent too many nights tracing dollar signs through lies. They shook my hand, but their eyes kept drifting past me, toward the water. Heather was the first to speak. This used to be a living shoreline. Her voice was quiet, almost mournful. She crouched by the sand, scooped a handful, let it slip through her fingers. Now it's a sandbox. Bulldozed reeds, lily pads gone, cattails wiped out. That wasn't just habitat. That was filtration. Your lake is suffocating. Ray knelt beside a spigot jutting from the dirt, tugged it free until a hose snaked out like a vein. And this, Jesus. He shook his head. Direct irrigation, no backflow preventer. If they're running fertilizer or bleach through this, it's pouring straight into the lake, straight into your fish, your water table. Criminal negligence, at best. Intentional at worst. My jaw clenched so tight it ached. Every word cut deeper. I had spent years protecting this ecosystem, designing drainage, monitoring runoff. And in 1 year, while I lay unconscious, they had dismantled everything. Heather filled vials with water, labeled them carefully, signed custody logs with crisp strokes. Ray photographed every hose, every pallet of lumber, every bag of concrete, stacked near the half-built dock that stretched into the water like a wound. Above us, a drone buzzed, its hum steady, capturing every inch from the sky. Marcus stood beside the operator, arms folded, eyes locked on the live feed on the laptop. The aerial view was worse than ground level. From above, the shoreline looked amputated, native grasses stripped, the reed barrier gone. Brown streaks of runoff bled into the water like veins. Marcus's jaw was tight. This isn't maintenance, this is destruction. Back at his office, the evidence piled into something undeniable. The drone footage flickered on a wide screen, before and after overlays showing a lake once alive, now carved into a sterile resort. Heather presented preliminary results. Nitrates and phosphates spiking, contamination levels consistent with chemical leaching. She laid out charts, spoke in a voice that carried the authority of science. The native filtration system is gone, she said. This beach isn't just fake, it's toxic. If left unchecked, you'll see algal blooms within a year, fish die-offs within 2, and once that cycle starts, it's almost irreversible. Ray opened his laptop, tapped keys, and the projector, shifted from shoreline images to spreadsheets. Numbers cascaded down the screen like rainfall. Here's the money, Ray said, his tone clipped, surgical. HOA dues diverted into a community enhancement trust. From there, payments funneled to Green Valley Holdings. Then he clicked again, tracing red lines between accounts. Everglow Commons, Delaware registration. No employees, no office, just a UPS box. Guess whose name is on the paperwork? Karen's face flashed on the screen, her signature scrawled, in black ink. I gripped the edge of the table, heat rising through my chest. Ray went on. They didn't stop at dues. They solicited outside investments. Called it an eco-tourism initiative. Brochures printed, websites built. They even listed donor testimonials. His tone sharpened. One of those donors? Paul Davidson. He flipped a page, projected a blurred photo of an obituary. Paul Davidson died 4 years ago. Heather cursed under her breath. Marcus didn't move. He just stared at the screen, stone-faced, then finally said, "This isn't a zoning dispute anymore. This is federal fraud." The room went still. Only the hum of the projector filled the air. I looked at the charts, the signatures, the photographs of strangers laughing on my stolen beach. My lake. My name erased. They didn't just steal my land, I said, voice low, rough. They built an empire on my grave. Marcus closed his laptop with a soft click, eyes sharp. Then we tear it down, piece by piece, dollar by dollar. 2 days later, we returned with a plan. Heather moved along the shoreline with military precision, snapping photographs, taking core samples of soil where concrete bags had bled gray dust. Ray combed through HOA newsletters, community emails, financial ledgers, tracing threads like a hunter following blood trails. We weren't alone. Curious neighbors had begun to notice. A man in his 70s lingered at the fence line, leaning, on a cane, his eyes wary. When Marcus waved him over, he introduced himself. Alvis Monroe, retired Air Force. He had owned a cabin just east of mine. I thought the county was maintaining it, Alvis said, shaking his head. Went in for surgery. Came back and it was gone. They turned it into a wildlife education trail, had signs up, maps, the whole thing. I didn't know it was a scam. Marcus scribbled his name down, eyes lighting with strategy. Another plaintiff, another voice, another wound Karen had carved. By nightfall, the file was a mountain. Photos, charts, audits, testimonies, evidence. Stacked so high, no HOA lawyer could explain it away. But the fuse hadn't burned out yet. The explosion was still to come, because while Heather and Ray tore open the truth, the drone caught something else. Something far worse. A meeting under the main gazebo. Karen at the head of the table, glass of wine in hand, 6 board members leaning close, laughing. The audio crackled through a parabolic mic. At first just static, then chatter, then laughter. And then Karen's voice, clear as if she stood in the room with us. He's not coming back, she said, laughter dripping from her tone. Even if he does, he'll be legally blind, legally broke, or legally buried. This place is ours now. The words sliced the air, my chest locked, my hands curled into fists so tight my nails drew blood. Marcus didn't smile, he didn't flinch. He just saved 3 copies of the recording and whispered, "We've got her." The fire came just after midnight. At first, I thought the alert ping on my phone was another raccoon nosing around the shoreline. But when the drone feed flickered open, my stomach dropped. A shadowy figure moved across the west bank, slipping, past the fencing with deliberate steps. Not a kid, not a neighbor. This man carried intent. The thermal camera caught the flare of a lighter, the hiss of liquid sloshed onto wood. Then ignition. Flames bloomed fast, orange tongues racing up the beams of the main gazebo. Treated lumber, propane tanks, tangled electrical wires, it all went up like kindling. Fairy lights snapped and popped. Within seconds, the gazebo that had been Karen's throne of arrogance glowed like a funeral pyre against the night sky. I stood, in the motel room, watching helpless as my lake burned on a screen. The figure fled, sprinting toward the access road. A gray Dodge Ram idled, engine rumbling. Motion-activated trail cams flashed, catching the plate clear as daylight before the truck swallowed the night. By dawn, Marcus had filed the footage with the fire marshal, chain of custody airtight. The plate came back fast, a subcontractor, one of Karen's men. That afternoon, Karen appeared on local news, standing stiff in front of cameras, lips painted into a false smile. "An unfortunate electrical accident," she said smoothly. The HOA had no knowledge of after-hours activity. But her mask cracked. Her eyes darted too fast, her tone too brittle. The Queen's composure was gone, replaced by a woman who knew the walls were closing in. And still, we weren't done. The courthouse in Kansas City felt less like justice and more like an arena. Polished marble floors, brass railings gleaming. Reporters lined the steps outside, cameras flashing as we walked in. Headlines were already rolling across the ticker. HOA fraud case goes federal. Karen arrived in a white blazer, silk scarf, oversized sunglasses she didn't remove even indoors. Her lawyer, some corporate silk-tongued shark from St. Louis, flanked her like a shield. She never looked at me. Not once. The trial began with precision. Marcus led the charge, voice calm but lethal. As he laid my deed on the table, survey maps spread wide. The jury leaned forward as drone photos flickered on screen before and after overlays. Untouched shoreline. Then the gaping scar of Willow Beach. Heather testified next. She didn't just present facts. She painted a picture. Before and after soil samples, charts of nitrate spikes, maps showing the collapse of filtration zones. She spoke of lily pads erased, cattails bulldozed, runoff poisoning fish. Her voice never wavered, each word pressing heavier than the last. The lake, she said, isn't just a body of water, it's a living system, and it's been suffocated. The courtroom went silent. Even the judge's eyes narrowed. Then came Ray. He laid out spreadsheets like a magician, revealing the trick. HOA dues funneled into enhancement trusts, payments rerouted through Green Valley Holdings, wire transfers into Everglow Commons, offshore accounts. And the listed donors? Ray asked, his voice sharp. One of them is Paul Davidson. He died 4 years ago. Gasps rippled across the gallery. Karen's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Finally, Marcus queued up the recording. The judge allowed it. Karen's voice filled the room cold and clear. He's not coming back. Even if he does, he'll be legally blind, legally broke, or legally buried. This place is ours now. The jury froze. Reporters scribbled like mad. Cameras clicked in the back. Karen sat stone-faced, her mask cracking with each second of her own words echoing around her. Her lawyer scrambled. He spun stories of community, stewardship, of gray zones, of acting in the absence of a legal owner. He painted her as a benevolent organizer forced into leadership by necessity. He even put Karen on the stand. She tried to cry. But Marcus was ready. He slid one paper across the table, tapped it with his pen. Karen, can you confirm this donor? She sniffled, nodded faintly. Yes, Paul Davidson. Marcus leaned closer, his voice calm but cutting. Paul Davidson has been dead for 4 years. The silence was volcanic. The jury recoiled. A murmur rippled. The judge struck his gavel, but the damage was done. Karen's tears dried instantly. For the first time, she looked small. 3 days later, the jury returned. The foreman stood, verdict in hand. His voice didn't shake. On all counts, he said, we find the defendant, Karen Woodley, guilty, conspiracy to defraud, falsifying documents, unauthorized land development, wire fraud, money laundering. The list went on. Karen's face blanched as deputies snapped cuffs on her wrists. Her board members followed, some crying, some defiant. They were led out in chains, still trying to hold their chins high. I didn't clap. I didn't smile. I just sat still as the gavel fell. The judge's order was merciless. Every illegal structure, gazebos, patios, bars, to be removed at the HOA's expense. Full restitution, environmental remediation under federal supervision. Legal fees paid in full. When the sentence was read, 25 years for Karen, no parole, the gallery erupted in whispers. Reporters surged. But I just sat there, breathing, alive and seen. The demolition took 6 months. Bulldozers tore down the gazebos. Trucks hauled away sand by the ton. Contractors stripped every tiki torch, every Adirondack chair, every smug symbol of Willow Beach. Heather oversaw remediation, planting native reeds, reseeding grasses, restoring my filtration trench. Slowly, painfully, the lake began to breathe. Again. Each morning I stood on my porch, coffee in hand, watching. I never spoke to the workers. I didn't need to. Every crash of wood, every shovel of sand hauled away was its own apology. By autumn, frogs croaked at night again. Dragonflies hovered over lilies, The water cleared, shedding its wounds. And in my bank account, $3.2 million, restitution for abuse of land, compensation for legal battles, even damages for emotional distress, enough to buy 10 lakes. But all I wanted was one. I used part of it to establish a conservation trust in my name, ironclad, untouchable. The rest bought a boat. Nothing. Flashy. Solid lines, quiet steering. I named her Resurrected. 1 year after the verdict, I built a fire pit by the water. No flyers? No guests of honor? Just a few people who mattered. Linda, still carrying her guilt but trying. Heather, Ray, Marcus, even Alvis, the veteran whose land had been stolen too. We sat around the flames, shared food, traded stories. Near midnight, I stood, hammered one last sign into the gravel at the shoreline. Private property, no exceptions. Beneath it, in small letters, I carved one more line. If you fake my death twice, I start charging rent. Laughter rippled through the circle. Real laughter, free laughter. And for the first time since I'd opened my eyes in that hospital bed, the lake answered with silence. Not suffocating silence, not stolen silence, but peace. Mine.